As companies grow, complexity often feels like progress. More teams, more layers, more systems, and more processes are seen as signs of scale and sophistication. Large organizations naturally accumulate specialized roles, approval chains, reporting structures, and internal tools. For a long time, this complexity was treated as unavoidable and even necessary. In 2026, large companies are confronting a different reality. Organizational complexity carries hidden costs that quietly erode performance, slow decision-making, and weaken competitiveness. The most immediate cost of complexity is slower decisions. As organizations add layers of management, approvals, and coordination, even simple decisions take longer than they should. What once required a single conversation now requires meetings, reviews, alignment emails, and sign-offs. This delay is not just inconvenient, it creates missed opportunities, slower responses to market changes, and frustration across teams. In fast-moving environments, delayed decisions are often worse than imperfect ones. Complexity also distorts accountability. In large organizations, responsibilities are frequently spread across multiple teams and roles. When something goes wrong, it becomes difficult to identify who owns the outcome. Problems are discussed, escalated, and analyzed, but not always resolved. This diffusion of responsibility reduces urgency and weakens execution. When everyone is involved, no one feels fully accountable. Another hidden cost is internal friction. Complex organizations require constant coordination between departments that operate with different priorities, incentives, and timelines. Teams spend significant time aligning, negotiating, and resolving conflicts instead of delivering value. This friction rarely appears in financial statements, but it consumes enormous amounts of employee time and energy. Organizational complexity also increases operational risk. More systems, handoffs, and dependencies create more points of failure. A small breakdown in one area can cascade across the organization. Highly complex processes are harder to monitor, harder to test, and harder to fix under pressure. What looks efficient on paper becomes fragile in practice. Communication suffers as complexity grows. Information must travel through layers, filters, and interpretations before reaching decision-makers. By the time insights reach the top, they are often delayed, diluted, or disconnected from reality. This gap between what leaders believe is happening and what teams experience on the ground leads to poor strategic choices. Complexity has a direct impact on costs as well. Duplicate roles, overlapping tools, parallel processes, and redundant reporting quietly inflate expenses. Over time, organizations pay for the same work multiple times without realizing it. Cost-cutting efforts often fail because they target visible expenses rather than structural complexity that drives waste. Technology has unintentionally amplified this problem. Large companies frequently add new systems without fully retiring old ones. Teams operate across multiple platforms, dashboards, and workflows. Instead of simplifying work, technology layers add cognitive load and integration challenges. Employees spend more time navigating systems than solving problems. Employee productivity is another casualty of complexity. As processes become more complicated, individual contribution becomes harder. Employees must learn rules, procedures, and exceptions before they can act. This slows onboarding, reduces creativity, and discourages initiative. Talented people become operators of systems rather than problem solvers. Complex organizations also struggle with adaptability. When markets change or new threats emerge, highly complex structures resist change. Adjustments require coordination across many units, approvals from multiple stakeholders, and updates to interconnected systems. By the time changes are implemented, conditions may have shifted again. Complexity turns adaptation into a slow, painful process. Innovation suffers as well. New ideas must navigate layers of evaluation, alignment, and approval. Many promising initiatives die not because they lack merit, but because the organizational effort required to launch them is too high. Complexity favors incremental improvement over meaningful innovation. From a leadership perspective, complexity obscures reality. Executives receive polished summaries rather than raw signals. Metrics multiply, but clarity decreases. Leaders may feel informed while missing early warning signs. This false sense of control is one of the most dangerous hidden costs of complexity. Organizational complexity also affects culture. Employees learn that progress requires navigating politics, not just delivering results. Initiative is replaced by caution. People focus on protecting their scope rather than improving outcomes. Over time, this erodes trust and engagement. Importantly, complexity does not scale linearly. Its cost increases exponentially. Each additional layer or system interacts with existing ones, multiplying coordination effort. What works at one size becomes unmanageable at another. Large companies often underestimate this compounding effect. In response, many organizations are rethinking how much complexity they truly need. Simplification is no longer about cutting headcount or flattening org charts alone. It is about reducing unnecessary dependencies, clarifying ownership, and designing structures that support faster decisions. Some companies are redefining roles to focus on outcomes rather than functions. Others are eliminating overlapping processes and consolidating tools. Clear decision rights, fewer approval steps, and more autonomy at the edges are becoming strategic priorities. These changes aim to restore speed without sacrificing control. Technology strategy is also evolving. Instead of adding more systems, companies are prioritizing integration, retirement of legacy tools, and usability. The goal is to reduce cognitive load rather than increase data volume. Leadership behavior plays a crucial role. Leaders who tolerate complexity often reinforce it unintentionally. Every new exception, special process, or additional layer feels justified in isolation. Over time, these decisions accumulate into a system no one fully understands. Disciplined leaders actively question whether new complexity is worth its cost. The hidden cost of organizational complexity is not just inefficiency. It is lost momentum, reduced clarity, weaker accountability, and slower learning. These costs compound quietly until performance declines without a clear cause. In 2026, large companies are learning that scale does not require endless complexity. Strength comes from clarity, not layers. The most effective organizations are not the most elaborate, but the most understandable. Reducing complexity is not about making organizations simplistic. It is about making them navigable. When people know who decides, how work flows, and what matters most, performance improves naturally. The hidden cost of organizational complexity is that it steals attention, time, and trust. Companies that recognize and address it gain speed, resilience, and focus. In an environment where adaptability matters more than size, simplicity has become a competitive advantage.